All right, kind of a ramble video. I don't have a specific subject, but I just been thinking about some other videos being made, and the gun issue, and then there was the Nick's reference to why people have kids, and just the whole idea of population and people and what. So anyway, I was thinking what the average person on Earth thinks, where their philosophy is, and whether they are, I don't know whether they're having some intellectual discussion about how their brain works. I tend to doubt it, that they're just living as the brain tells them to live, for either a god or for nature. And again, that question sort of came up in some of the comments on the video by the Modern Mystic, on the issue of why people have kids. There really is no rational reason. It's always going to be some emotional reason. It's always going to be it's not a requirement. It's not a necessity. It's not a basic need of life. It's one of these extras people feel entitled to, and people who have a compulsion, a need for it. Some sense that it'll complete their life or add to their life something they desire. Frankly, I never had any real desire to have kids. I had moments in my life where I would think, yes, when the ego is big, oh yes, what would a little me be like? But I know the answer to the question. It would not be a good thing. But people don't really consider, the consequence. It's not a free decision. It's not socially free. And so that got me thinking about the whole inheritance thing, and the idea that so many people will defend this legacy wealth, and this whole idea that people have birthrights, and that, on the inane, in my opinion, argument that people will somehow work less. I think if Donald Trump had no kids, he'd still be Donald Trump. Wouldn't make any difference. And I think the same is true for all of them. Forbes and all the billionaires, they wouldn't behave one tiny bit differently if they had kids or didn't have kids. Kids might even suck up some of their time. They might actually be parents once in a while. It might even distract them from their passion for their business. But it doesn't add to their passion for business. It doesn't add to their passion to make money and collect wealth. And I think that's true in all cases. I think it's a big fat lie when people say they're working for their kids or for some legacy. Now, they're working for their ego, and that's the simple truth. So anyway, the whole idea that I've always argued about inheritance, that it's this one-way street thing. It's this whole, everybody gets to inherit the good, but nobody has to inherit the bad. Instead, they just declare bankruptcy and make it a social problem. Make the society have to foot the bill. And so it's worse than welfare in that sense, because there's no there's this unfair side that just is not paid for. Welfare you can blame on ignorance. This we're doing deliberately. Welfare you sort of have to do just because, there's an innocent child involved.
Well, like I said, the whole notion, I've argued this before because it's just an I know I'm just rambling, and this is what this video is going to be, and I'm sorry about that. But the whole idea, as an atheist, we're arguing about the idiocy of theism. But there's so many atheists that, they'll make the argument, you have to have kids because that's how we're biologically constructed. Like, that's a good argument, because nature says so, we should do it. And it's, just as, it's bad enough taking advice from a 4,000-year-old book. It's even stupider to take advice from a, 4 billion-year-old idiotic natural force. And it's even older than that, really. From the Big Bang, you're talking, 10 billion or whatever. Stupid. Stupid forces are going to tell you what is right and wrong, and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. It's one thing to, if you're too stupid to realize you're compelled by emotion and conditioning to be caught up in it. But once you know there's part of your judgment that is corrupt, that is selfish, that is illegitimate as a source of understanding or wisdom, and is nothing but some bad programming, and that's what it is. We can play games and the rest of it, and trying to glorify nature, but nature creates a lot of bad programming. The whole anger response, the lack of discipline, the greed, and the selfishness that's sort of innate inside of us, our insatiability. These aren't good things. These aren't logical mechanisms. And so anyway, back to the human perspective thing, because you're thinking, well, you know, even in the intelligent community, you have to have these extensive arguments to make simple points, like nature's stupid and God is stupid. So that's a, you know, so even if you get somebody to that point, then they're crazy enough to think, you know, guns are great, violence is fine, it's a way to solve problems. Yes, we should sell C4 at Walmart. Everybody should own bazookas. You know, it just there's no, you know, and then the anarchy thing. I mean, you know, finally at least Lucas conceded that, oh yeah, what's a nice fantasy, you know, but you know, so we should just have this stupid academic conversation about anarchy. There's 4 million problems in the world, and we should just waste our time academically talking about a fairy tale and how nice it would be to live in the fairy tale. And so that was the context of his support for anarchy, is that, oh, well, how can you be against it because it's a wonderful fairy tale? Well, of course, yeah. I mean, we're all for voluntarism. Yeah, it's great. I'd say really wonderful. Yeah, as long as everybody else is obliged to be just like me and not a cheat and a liar, fine. But that's not the real world. But anyway, and like I said, the real world has these 6 billion people who are deciding what the future is going to be. I mean, they're the ones having all these kids. They are going to, you know, that philosophy is winning the battle by attrition, unfortunately. And certainly those people will, some percentage of those people, even though they come from a belief system that sees logic in having 10 kids, you know, some of those kids will grow up to say, boy, that was sure stupid. I wouldn't do that, blah, blah, blah. They'll be intellectuals or whatever. But, you know, the majority of them will continue the game. The maze rat race game will continue because other people are going to make that decision. And they're going to make it out of blind ignorance, pretty much. They're going to just follow God or nature, and logic isn't going to enter into the equation. And it's sort of depressing, you know, because you can't really change the world if, you know, first you have to educate the world. And we're not even coming close to getting that job done. The average human just isn't anywhere, isn't having this conversation, isn't listening to it, isn't even close to being part of any kind of conversation about the purpose or point in having more children. And even people who talk about, oh, yeah, well, let's explore space and do all this other stuff, and they talk about, it's like it's the same, they just want to take the same human vice into space. They just want to colonize it. Why? Well, not for no particular good reason, because it's there, you know. It's like the mountain climber or something. And so anyway, on the kid issue, I mean, I would certainly suggest that we should certainly have, people should have to have a license to have kids. Obviously, people will have kids without having a license. And in that circumstance, they should be forced to take some classes or something in responsibility, especially social responsibility, because that's the other downside to this. People are feeding some emotional need, and maybe they'll get what they want. Maybe they'll get the perfect little child that they're looking for, that's going to be, you know, unconditionally love them and do all the things they're expecting. But if they don't, and they just create a piece of crap, that's society's liability. It's like people talk about, like Mexico or other countries where people have, you know, a ton of children as a social security policy. I mean, they figure, well, one of my kids will be successful, and he'll take care of me in my old age. And there's no consideration of the downside, which is, well, yeah, but most of the kids I have might just be a huge liability and just end up being a social liability. You know, something for other people to have to worry about, either harming them or consuming them, in the sense that they are going to require attention and resources, and they're not going to be productive citizens. And, you know, there's no consideration of that side of the equation, the consequence side. And you see it even in this country. Like I said, there's a lot of subsidies for having children. And why? Because most people have children, so that's why we get stuck in this trap. People who believe in reproduction reproduce, and then they instill that belief in most of their own children. So we're always going to be stuck being a minority as long as this freedom to reproduce remains, freedom to ignorantly reproduce, or reproduce without at least writing on a piece of paper what the damn reason is you're reproducing. And if you can't, you know, put down something rational, it's either going to be selfish or irrational. You know, there is no rational answer. And, you know, like I said, I mean, look how much money is being paid from people who don't have kids. Why should people who don't have kids pay such a high price? I mean, 80% of property taxes, and cigarette smokers, you know, $3,000 a year if you're smoking more than a pack a day. It's a lot of money to pay for other people's kids for a decision they made, a selfish decision. And it's just, you know, that's just weird in the context of everything, in the context of this society that just embraces so many unproductive things. Like, I mean, inheritance is just so unproductive, socially unproductive, to allow people to inherit preposterous amounts of money. It doesn't do us any good. We just end up with a bunch of well-fed, well-educated people who have no compulsion to really work. And and their only interest might be is that yes, at least they have the ownership business. They have the good job, the job where they tell other rats what to do and where to go, and play games with their lives. They have the fun job. They don't have the shitty jobs. They're not spending 8 hours a day picking up garbage for their, millions a year in dividends. It's just, well, anyway, it's just my rant, just a ramble, the whole thing is just a mess. And I don't even know if we can philosophically get out of it because it's so hard to get anywhere. I mean, you could argue with people. I mean, you have to make 10 videos with somebody to get them to concede that, yeah, well, no, they really shouldn't be selling C4 at Walmart. But I don't even know if I got them to concede that. I mean, there's people out there that really think you can have a functional society and sell explosives at the grocery store. So, anyway, enough said. Probably went over time. Yeah, good. I can speed it up and make it even more irritating. I'm really sorry.